When Jody called and asked me to write a story about Coy and I thought, this is going to be a piece of cake. There's so many stories, I won't have no problem doing this. So I sat down and I started writing a story, and I thought, I probably better not tell that story. So I'd tear that sheet of paper up and start writing another one. I'd get a little ways into that, and I'd think, I know I better not tell this story. Kind of got to noticing a trend, and I thought, if any story I tell, everybody's going to think that Coy and I were just a couple of guys that had a little too much drink and went out and poached a deer. So I decided to tell the story about the first time Coy and I ever met. Now, before I start, remember, this was over 30 years ago. Coy and I were both young family men with hungry mouths to feed. We did take a few more deer than were exactly legal, but we used every ounce of deer meat to feed our families. Ron Bliss and I had been friends forever. We quail hunted together a lot, and I deer hunted, but Ron really didn't hunt deer. In fact, deer hunting was really something not many people in northwest Oklahoma did. Ron said he had this friend from southeastern Oklahoma he wanted to bring up and deer hunt. And I said, well, bring him up. We'll take him. And we didn't know anything about deer blinds or sitting and waiting on deer. Deer hunting at that time amounted to icing down a ice chest full of Coors Light and going out and driving around and pick up till you saw a deer and shoot it. This particular time was black powder season. This was years ago, and scopes weren't legal on black powder rifles. I had an old .45 caliber black powder gun that I'd made myself. Well, if I was lucky, when I saw a deer, it'd go off. And if I was even luckier, it would hit the deer. Coy had kind of an unusual black powder gun. He had a 30-06 automatic with a scope on it. Well, we loaded up and we rode around all morning. We didn't have any luck. We didn't see any deer. After lunch, Coy and I decided we wanted to walk some draws. Coy and I loved to walk draws. It always made Ron mad, because he said we left all of our scent all over the draw and the deer would leave. Believe me, that fact came up several times in the years to come. But this time Ron gave in and we started to walk draws. We were about 3/4 of the way through the first draw when we came up on a large plum thicket. Coy went one way and I went the other, and about halfway around we flushed out a covey of small bucks. Well, before I could get a shot off, before I could even get pulled down on one, Coy killed them all. I guess we showed Ron that it doesn't matter if you leave your scent in the draw, just kill all the deer and then they won't smell you. But later on we found he wasn't really too fond of that option either. Well, I knew right then that Coy was my kind of guy. And as Coy would always tell it, this big son of a gun grabbed one buck with one hand and two with the other hand and started running back to the pickup, and he thought I was his kind of guy too. That was the first of 30 years of hunting stories and hunting friendships and just friendships for Coy and I. There was times Ron would get so mad at us he couldn't even talk. He wouldn't even talk to us. One of those times, Coy and I, again, like all of our stories, we'd had a few too many Coors Lights. We was up on the state line and run into a herd of mule deer. Well, again, it was black powder season, and I'd graduated to a little better black powder gun. I had a 25-06, and Coy had his 30-06. That's probably one of them stories I better not tell. Coy was always one of the best friends anybody could ask for. He was the best friend I could ever dream of having. I'll always miss you, buddy. Until next time.
Coy and I, we met in 1988. We both went to work at the same Ford dealership, and somehow we just gravitated towards each other, and we got to talking, and he got to telling me about all this deer hunting and all these stories, and I'd never heard such a thing, and I wasn't a deer hunter, and I got to telling him about quail hunting, and by golly, we decided in the fall we were gonna go, and that began 30 years. We just finished 30 years of hunting together, and Jody wanted me to tell a story, and I don't think I can tell one about hunting because I don't think the statute of limitations would be out on some of that stuff, and we probably better not go there. But in 1989, Coy and I both went to Newcastle, and we went to work for a Ford dealership, and they furnished us demos. Well, Coy being Coy, he had the biggest four-wheel drive diesel 3/4 ton that was on the dealership lot. And I was worried about gas mileage, so I had a little Ford Ranger. And we were going to work one morning, and I seen him, and I cut him off, and I went to go around him. And he seen me, and the race was on. And we was on a service road with a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit coming around the curve, and I think we were doing about 80, and we got the two trucks hooked together. But he didn't know it. And we were running out of road, and we were coming to a dead end. And I thought this is it for sure. And I laid on the brakes, and I got all four tires squealing. Well, because our back bumpers was hooked together, he thought I was still trying to get around. So he wouldn't give, and needless to say, we both lived. And when we got stopped, he got out. He was ready to kill me, and he said, "You dummy, we could have both lost our jobs." And I said, "Well, why didn't you just let me go around?" And he said, "You know I couldn't do that. The job ain't that important." But with some touch-up paint and a little help from Luther, and by golly, the trucks was good as new, and we went on. Somebody said a couple days, said, "Hey, in a few days, you'll get past this." Let me tell you something. I'll get past that. But I'll never forget, because from this day forward, every time I see a deer, I'm going to think of Coy. If I hear the word crappie, I'm going to think of Coy. When I see a calf working shoot, I'll think of nothing but Coy. If a four-wheel drive crew cab diesel passes me doing 20 over, I'm thinking of Coy. If I see somebody wearing jeans that starch so much how I don't know how they ever got their legs in them, I'm going to think of Coy. And when I see a pocket knife that's 4 times bigger than a pocket knife ever should have been, I'll think of Coy. Every Coors Light can I see, I'm going to think of Coy. But most of all, when I sit down and there's 8 of us for dinner, but there's enough food on the table for 28, I'll think of Coy. I know there's a lot of friends here, and Webster's definition of a friend is a person whom one has a bond of mutual affection. When I was in California, I met the smartest man I ever knew, and one day he was speaking, and he said, if you're truly, truly blessed in your lifetime, you'll fill one hand with true, great friends. And it upset me a lot. I thought, I got lots of friends. That's crazy. And I caught him out in the hallway, and I said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And he said, well, let me tell you my definition of a true friend. He said, it's Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, and your friend's got plans to go to the lake for the weekend, or they're in a golf tournament, and you hit them at 4 o'clock and say, hey, I'm moving tomorrow, and I need your help. They don't even say nothing. They just say what time and where. I'm going to tell you what kind of friend Coy was. There's a lot of you in here that's his friends, and all of you, this would be the same. If you called him and said, Coy, I got a problem, and it's with some people, and it ain't good, and I need your help, and some people's probably going to die, all he'd say is, you want me to bring the guns or you want me to bring the shovels? I'll be there. Let me tell you what, Coy's my friend, and I'm going to miss my friend. Thanks.
This is a story about my friend, best friend. Knew him over 43 years. We were working together at a car dealership. One day I just felt like I'd play a trick on him. Owners were getting ready to go out of town. Coy hated memos, as you can expect. And I had the owner's wife type me up a memo, this was in October, that we were going to have to dress up for Halloween. Well, in my mean behavior, I had her write up that he was chosen to be the jack-o'-lantern. Well, had her type up this memo. Coyd already left for the day. Laid it on his desk. The owners were going out of town. Well, next morning, I couldn't hardly wait for him to go to his office. I go to mine, kind of to hide, thinking he'd come storming in my office. And instead, he came walking in my office, holding this memo, just staring in disbelief. I said, "What do you got?" He said, "You get one of these?" I said, "Yeah, no big deal. Couple of weeks, we dress up one day, we work, go home. No big deal." He said, "Man, I don't know about this. I don't know if I can do this. How am I going to do my job?" I said, "What in the world did you get chosen to be?" He said, "A jack-o'-lantern." I start laughing. He just stares at me. He asked me what I was going to be. I said, "Now that you bring that up, I may need to borrow a few things, but I can't believe you have to be a jack-o'-lantern." And the anger in his face and his eyes, you could see it. He said, "Wag, what do you got to be?" I said, "I got to be a cowboy. May need to borrow a belt buckle, a few things from you. One of those snappy shirts that cowboys wear." He said, "You know I don't wear those." And I said, I know, no big deal." He said, "Man, swap with me." I said, "There ain't no way. You're a good best friend of mine for a long time, but I ain't being no jack-o'-lantern." He stormed out of my office. This went on. The whole dealership kept this private for probably a week to 10 days, and it finally came to a culmination when his girlfriend at the time called and said he gave me orders this morning to either have the jack-o'-lantern outfit done or me be gone. So Ron and I decided that we'd have to let him know. So he came in that morning. We were talking, visiting, drinking coffee. He decides, we're still talking about this. It's within a couple of days of Halloween. I tell him, "There's a scratch on the truck there in the showroom. You need to look on the other side over there." I have him walk over there. He bends down. "There ain't no scratch here." And I said, "Well, you don't have to wear the jack-o'-lantern outfit either." And I was sure glad I was on the other side of the truck. As you can imagine, he wasn't too pleased with me. But it wasn't only me that held that favor of having a special memory. To my buddy, we'll hunt again.